That is the top thing, and that's always been the case in software and technology, is that, it's great that we can build things for the sake of building them, but if there's no business problem to be addressed in a very different or unique way, it's just, kind of who cares? I think what's unfortunate is that a lot of sales leaders that I meet with, their bar is too low for what they expect AI to do for their teams. They're living in a world of, boy, if it cleaned up my CRM data, boy, if it enriched a lead list, boy, if it wrote my email 20% better. That's not transformation, right? Those are gimmicks, and I think that's the trap a lot of folks have fallen into.
Scaling to tens of millions in ARR sounds like the dream until you hit obstacles. Vivun faced that reality, then made the bold leap, shifting from pre-sale SaaS to one of the world's most advanced AI sales agents.
In this episode, Matt Darrow, CEO and founder of Vivun, shares an honest perspective on reinvention, risk, and how to continue building momentum in an evolving market. Thanks, Matt, for joining us.
Angelique and Tracy, really happy to be here and share this story. Thanks for having me.
Welcome to Ascend, Stories of Scale. I'm Angelique.
And I'm Tracy.
Matt comes from an engineering background and spent over a decade building and scaling B2B tech companies, including with an IPO. Today, he's the co-founder and CEO of Vivun, where he's rethinking what modern B2B selling looks like with Ava, an AI sales teammate that works alongside with reps. So let's get this started. When did this idea really click for you? You realized that sales team doesn't need another tool, but an actual AI teammate.
Well, strangely enough, the origin story of Vivun actually happened in a van in New Zealand, of all places. We have a very interesting founding background where my co-founder is actually my wife. She was at Google at the time. I was at Zora at the time. We had just gone public, and it was kind of time to take a break and take some time off. So we did what any sane person would do, is to drop everything, leave home, buy a one-way plane ticket, buy a very tiny camper van, be in the outdoors, and get intentionally bored. And that's what we'd spent months doing. And I remember sitting down there after sort of being in the outdoors and hiking and camping for such a long period of time. And I developed this list of sort of ideas I was really excited about. And this idea for Vivun came from my deep expertise in B2B selling and enterprise software over 15 years, and a lot of, I would say, unmet needs that I personally went through that just had to be addressed and had to be solved. That's where it started, and once I started to write the first lines of code, I had to get out of the van to an Airbnb so I could even get Wi-Fi, by the way, to do that. And we were working like 14 hours a day because we loved the idea so much. We bought our plane ticket back to the US and called up who became my other co-founders. Strangely enough, another married couple. Shocker! Don't get too surprised there. But it was very, very sort of unique founding structure. But it was a group of individuals that everybody had a deep domain expertise in and around this space, and a group that I couldn't imagine doing this without.
Awesome. And we did talk about this, Matt. You're going through this pivot phase right now. Like, you started from enterprise, now you're going into SMBs. What were the signals that you saw that you think this needed to happen?
Well, I would actually say this is sort of big transformation number 2 for Vivun. The first is how Tracy kicked off the episode here, where we were on a tear in the SaaS market. We'd raised $130 million from Unusual Ventures, Excel, Menlo, Salesforce, phenomenal investors still with us to this day. We had achieved over $500 million of valuation in the company, attacking workflows in B2B that had never been touched before, focused on the domain of technical selling and all the nuances behind that. And about 2 years ago, when AI was going from science experiment to actually being useful in production environments, we stepped back and said, well, what we were doing just didn't have a future. There just wasn't going to be a long-term answer for SaaS tech that powered humans to kind of corral and run their workflows, because the future was going to be AI that could just do that job. And that was a huge pivot that we had made the first time, because we had grown the business to tens of millions of ARR. And again, valuation, growth, and all those great things were happening, but it just was kind of going to be a path to not where we all wanted to go. So that was huge change number one, and that's what we've been up to over about the last 18 months, is bringing to market a true AI native teammate for sales that takes the mind of an expert B2B seller and inserts it in your flow of work before, during, and after every call. And it just drives amazing outcomes. So that actually led us to sort of change number two, what you're describing, Angelique, around we had so much enterprise focus from our SaaS world, and we still work with so many large enterprise customers from that time, but it's actually really clearly that adoption cycle for enterprise versus mid-market is just really, really different, and that's why we're driving really, really hard into broad-based adoption of companies that are a little bit smaller in size and scope, that can just move faster and experience things faster because they don't have 20 years of incumbent technologies that they've purchased and are still trying to shoehorn into this AI world.
Right. So speed played a huge role in shifting from shifting to mid-market. Was there anything else that was critical for product truth and growth?
And the thing to note for us too is we still have a really big enterprise focus because of those clients and our lineage and where we've come from and our expertise. But the way that from us as a startup, we really understand like how we can accelerate this thing in a big way is that's why, just more and more customers, right, in a little bit of a smaller segment is really, really helpful to build this out, because what we're doing has never been done before. Back in the day, if you were doing invoice management, it was paper, and then it was like a computer printout, and then it was like software, then it was on-prem software, then it was like cloud software, then it was mobile software, but you were still doing the same thing. You were still like writing an invoice for your client. No sales team on the planet has ever sold with an AI teammate before, ever, full stop, because it was just never possible. So those mid-market companies have a tendency to just be more progressive adopters. Now, there are exceptions in the enterprise. There's some phenomenal enterprise companies that we partner with that are ahead of the curve, but that's normally not, I would say, the common pattern there, Tracy. So that's why that focus was important.
What kind of evolution concerning your product happened in order to work with some of those smaller companies?
Well, in the enterprise, there's so much staff and so much process and so much rigor. You normally have this really strong centralized management that you can kind of count on for enablement, adoption, rollout, strategy. And that's different as you sort of get smaller in organizations, because they just don't have the staff around that. So those luxuries aren't really there, where you've got a center of excellence or an AI squad or an AI committee that's going to go and get everything perfect and then roll it out to the teams. Now, for us to go and gobble up and help as many companies as humanly possible that are maybe a little bit smaller but more widespread, you couldn't necessarily rely on that. So a lot of the product push had to become like, how could it be incredibly easy for people to get started and see value that didn't have this centralized management and sort of governance structure? And let me give you an example with this, is training AI. So what we've done and invented in our space is our own proprietary sales reasoning model. So LLMs are still really critical for what we do. And I like to think of this analogy of they're sort of just the mouthpiece. But the brain of how AI operates, does the work, and makes decisions is actually a model that we've built on our own that's very specific to the domain of sales. That's what doesn't make it a liability in your go-to-market process. I bring that up, though, because while it has the brain of the best B2B seller, it would be like, Angelique, if you hired me to run sales at one of your organizations, yeah, I know everything about selling, but boy, I don't know anything about your product at your company versus maybe Tracy, your product at your company. So in the enterprise, you can normally count on groups of enablement and leadership and centralized documentation that you can go and sort of boot up and
There's a
onboard.
structure already, yes.
Totally
Definitely.
right, for this AI. And in smaller organizations, you can't. It's just like chaos everywhere. There's there's maybe a Notion file here, there's Google Drives, there's you ask
they can
what
even
happened.
find where the files are. And actually,
sure.
we chat about this, Matt. The sweet spot of like some of our clients at AScaleX is like Series A and B. They're within that, wherein the sales team is very like small, but they have to bring into a deal of very complex sales process. Right.
Totally.
So I think I can really see the value of augmenting some of that workflow.
Well, Angelique, let me ask you a question. Work with smaller teams at Series A, B, C types of organizations too. Yeah, how many of them have centralized management, have a true onboarding process, have a framework?
No.
It's the exception, not the rule.
It's very unique when I come into the picture, like AScaleX come in and be like, oh, we have a perfect CRM, we have an RFP process laid out. Most of the time, there's a sales ops managing an RFP that has been going on for a month.
Yep.
And all of these things, trying to get answers from product, from the VP of engineering, from all of these things and stuff. So that actually has been a pain point for a sales team, and they have to drive this like in real time to close the deals and hit their quotas.
Yep. So here's the product change that had to be solved from an engineering standpoint is in that type of environment, without centralized governments, but there is a team in place, there is a product in place, they're pushing things forward. AI has to be able to come into the fold and self-discover and boot itself up. Now, what's been phenomenal is, luckily, because of a lot of the tools out there, there's a lot of publicly available information in depth around most organizations, their customers, their competitors, their product sets, their use cases, there's value, everything else. So what happens in this mid-market sort of segment is AI comes on the scene and self-teaches itself nearly all of this. And what happens is now you can have a teammate that operates like a 2-year sales veteran on day 0, on minute 1, and then just gets better and better over time as you feed it more information. But without that solve, you can't service the market at scale because there's just too much effort to get into the training process over and over again.
Companies always ask for, we need to insert AI in all of these. From what you're seeing, Matt, how would you say that the company is ready for AI to be inserted in their workflow in sales?
The number one question I always ask, Angelique, is to actually see if there's a problem to even be solved. And I think that's a lot of what 2025 was AI testing for the sake of AI testing, because if you didn't show you were doing it, you're bored.
I was even about to say, I had a conversation, and this is an actual client saying, we need AI. And I'm like, what are we trying to solve for? We just need it because the board's asking for it.
Yep.
And I need to show it in my year-end plan that we're doing something for 26. And I'm like, I can help you like figure that out if we have a problem we're trying to solve, but they can't even determine that.
Yep. And that is, I mean, that is the top thing. And that's always been the case in software and technology, is that, you know, it's great that we can build things for the sake of building them, but if there's no business problem to be addressed in a very different or unique way, it's just kind of who cares? And I think what's unfortunate is that a lot of sales leaders that I meet with, their bar is too low for what they expect AI to do for their teams. They're living in a world of, boy, if it cleaned up my CRM data, boy, if it enriched a lead list, boy, if it wrote my email 20% better. That's not transformation, right? Those are gimmicks, and I think that's the trap a lot of folks have fallen into.
How are people working together with an AI agent? What does that feel like for them?
They've never experienced it before, so this is sort of big change number one. It's sort of like the first time you used ChatGPT and you typed in something and you couldn't believe the text that you got back. It's a very radical moment, because imagine on a Riverside call, there's just another box here, and that's our AI teammate. And it takes some people a little bit getting used to, and we solve for that in product because we give them different modes based on their comfort level. So I'll go down 2 routes for you. One is everything orients around the most important moment that sales teams can't mess up, which is the live call with the customer. That's where a deal dies or it moves forward. And that's the thing that nobody has patience anymore. You only get one shot, right? You're not going to get a second or third try. So you have to show up in that moment. And if you F it up, for lack of a better word, right, now it's going to a competitor, that deal's going to die. So everything orients around that critical live experience with the client. So when you work with the teammate, it makes you sure you're prepped going into that moment. It joins you in that moment as it's happening, and then afterwards does all the grunt work and the follow-up and the things that sort of reduce the sales toil. So that's the thing that's never been experienced before. That's really, really fun to see people do.
Oh, cool. It's like getting an assistant when you're, anyone can have an assistant now. That should be pretty exciting.
Except luckily, Tracy, this assistant knows more than probably your most
Some of the
seasoned
employees.
salesperson. Yeah, exactly.
I was about to say. Yeah, no, I mean, but Matt, how do you guys help navigate organizations that think AI is a threat? Like, I'm a sales rep. I don't think this is going to work. I mean, I've worked with a lot of sales reps before, and usually they hate CRM. They just want to sell and manage relationships. And now I have to deal with an AI agent.
Totally.
Right? So, like, how do you remove that barrier that this will just be a blocker for me to reach my quota? And actually, I can delegate work, and this will actually help me expedite my deals.
There's like 8 things that immediately came to mind. I'm going to try to pick like 2 of them, but that's such a good question. The first is, let's just talk about the painful history of sales tech in general. The sales team is kind of like the military. You've got the general at the top that looks down to the troops and says, this is what you're doing. These are the tools you have. This is how we're going to attack. Don't ask any questions. And if you're like the top 10% performer, I'm not really going to pay attention to you. You can do what you want, and everybody else is going to fall in line.
True.
And if you don't make quota, as long as you fall in line, you're not fired. But if you're not doing what I told you and you don't make quota, right? What happens, right? Then you're gone. So there's always been this that's all like sales tech. And I think the first difference is like a teammate is the first thing that actually works for the rep. That directly impacts their wallet, which is what they care about. How do I win more faster and put more dollars in my pocket against my quota? And that's just a different dynamic. So I think the first thing is like this type of technology approaches those sentiments differently, because it's like, oh great, it's not another inspection tool where my boss is going to look at my gong calls and then call me up on a Saturday and start yelling at me for things that he doesn't know about. That's the normal notion of sales tech. Now here's the second part is it's all around, I think, for the vendor side, the positioning of the tool too. And let me give you 2 examples here. One is Salesforce just acquired Qualified. Craig Swearend over there, great company, Piper, the AI SDR. That was clearly positioned as a human replacement, and their value.
I saw those ads, by the way.
Yeah,
those are very controversial.
Bingo, but like that was the intent, Angela, right? You're like, well, a human isn't here these hours of the day, so this thing we're just going to plug it in. And then if you're an SDR on the team, you're like, what the heck? I'm on my leaderboard competing with this robot over here. Now that's very, very different than, I would say, like the approach that we take where it's a teammate that's pairing up with you in your flow of work. And that's like the diff of how you get these sales teams on board in a really positive way is, one, it actually impacts the thing that the rep cares about, which is closing deals, not just having my manager inspect me. And the second thing is how it's built, the positioning, and how it actually functions, slipstreams into my flow of work, isn't there to take away my cycles.
And I think you did a beautiful job of explaining how AI is being just a pivotal part of your sales flow of the future. Are there any misconceptions that you were surprised hearing about?
Yeah, Tracy, the thing that immediately came to mind for me, especially in the sales context, is how quickly their customers and buyers are craving something different too. And I think that's a good point for reflection for any sales org, that again, the unfortunate low bar of teams out there is the data filler outer, the email writer better, right? The lead scrubber dubber, right? Those things are like, but that doesn't like actually change what the customer wants. Is just a much more streamlined experience, and I would actually throw. Let's just kind of unpack this analogy in a little bit, because it has to go to the buyer's patience level too. If you look in life, like if it's not immediately available or valuable, like people don't like it anymore.
Yeah, the instant gratification.
The last thing that they want to do with a vendor is deal with, I don't know, I'll get back to you maybe next time. Ooh. That's the thing that kills the future of every sales organization.
What do you think is the minimum structure, right? Like of an organization to say, hey, we're ready for having AI in our infrastructure, at least on the sales side, right? Like, do they need to have an established CRM? Do they need to have like a minimum of this number of, let's say, opportunities already laying, like a minimum revenue, and for it to make sense for them to invest on this?
When we look small towards like a Series A, B company,
Yeah.
I think the first thing is you need to transition out of founder-led sales, because in founder-led sales, you're still doing a lot of founder discovery. What's the pitch? What's the deck? What do I tell you? I roll that into product feedback, right? All this stuff happens where there's nothing really to scale yet because it hasn't reached the point where the founder can hand it off. So I think that's like the absolute minimum bar for a smaller company, where the founder's like, we have product market fit, we know who we're selling to, this is the value proposition, and now let's bring some reps on board to go and do this. In the large cos, like enterprise, Fortune 500, these types of individuals, there needs to be a level of volume, meaning if you're a company that's doing incredibly one-off custom deals, you have a team that maybe works 2 big pursuits per rep per year. Like, yeah, AI can help you there, but like the transformational effect happens where you have large distributed sales organizations that are probably performing differently. EMEA versus APAC, East versus West, enterprise versus whatever that is. And then there's volume going through that system where you've got reps constantly ramping, performance challenges like that. That's the other bar that you want in that mature company, is that it's not one-off bespoke custom deals, but there's like a machinery in place that you're trying to go and sort of rip out the engine and put something different in place.
That makes so much sense. It reminds me of.
Well, think about your CRM comment too, Angelique. I think is important as well. Where we have a CRM, people they're not getting rid of Salesforce or HubSpot anytime soon. But like that's not really a bar, because when you think about a teammate, well, a teammate just needs to be able to slip into your flow of work. And when you're a seller, well, what does that mean? That means being able to engage with my customer. At the beginning of our convo, when we talked about like servicing enterprise versus SMB, this core difference of you have sort of centralized governance of information that you need, versus an SMB just sort of has a spider web of stuff that's hanging around everywhere. That's why the product needs to help the customer here. Meaning, I mentioned around how AI can show up and do all of the self-discovery and self-learning just to get started. So you could literally have this thing up and running within 30 minutes of signing up. And it's going to be almost as good as probably your 80% performer. And then you can give it more detail from there. Why this becomes important, though, is like how it trains is important. But then the other thing that's you're starting to hear more about, but it's vastly underlooked right now, is what happens with all the information that AI is learning. Where I'm going with this is we wrote this research paper, and we'll send it out, and you guys can maybe cross-share it. But we did this research that said, well, what happens when AI just sort of like gobbles up a lot of information and it's using LLM plus RAG to do retrieval and generate results, versus you give it structured domain knowledge through graphs and ontologies. And what you find is in really complex domains, finance, medicine, sales, biology, like these realms that actually have a lot of concepts that are like coupled together but not super logically related, is LLMs just like die in performance. Like if you ask it more than just the simplest basic question, like it just starts to go off the rails. This is where you hear not just hallucinations, but just, it just becomes a liability. So what happens is when you give structured knowledge, you can actually retain near perfect reasoning no matter how complex the scenario gets. So I bring that up because a lot of people assume, well, I got a bunch of docs somewhere, I'm going to throw it at Claude, and then like, cool, I've got a sales agent. You're like, that's not how any of this works. Like you still have a liability on your hand.
You have to structure it a certain way and not just like, flush all the information. That's really good to know, because a lot of people are doing that. They're uploading all their information on different LLMs, and then they're just expecting it to process it for them. And then, Matt, we've seen a lot of people dive into AI really fast. So we've seen a lot of successes and also like companies who failed in getting the most out of it. So from like that CEO point of view, talking to as a founder, listening to this, what are the metrics or indicators that they should look for to actually determine that, hey, this is successful for us or this didn't work for us?
When we work with especially larger clients, there's normally like an adoption metric around are the users using it. That one's always sort of a something that's common there. And then you start to roll into the business impact and our whole point around, well, the number one problem is people don't identify what is the problem that AI is trying to help me solve. And when I think from my chair and when I prepare a board deck or a end of fiscal year plan, the investment community, like they cross share a lot of benchmarks, like Iconic does great benchmarks, Bessemer does too. Like, there are these folks that sort of cross share this information, and it all boils down to kind of like the same set of stuff. It's, your ARR per FTE, your net magic number, your burn multiple, like those types of things. And that's what all this stuff should ultimately trickle up and impact. Because as a CEO, you're like, well, how am I going to drive valuation for my company up and shareholder value up? Well, it's going to be because I'm going to impact those metrics, not because I can write documents 50% faster. Like, okay, but if that doesn't help my ARR per FTE, then it hasn't helped me. And I think that's where those two things have to come together.
Yeah, that makes sense. So how do you answer then if I am like a CEO thinking of like where to put my budget? Should I invest on like a technology similar to yours, or should I double down on my team and add more resources on my team? What's a good balance there from what you're seeing?
Some of it is maybe where the investment might go. So if we, again, use the example and the contrast of super top of funnel, like, Qualified was doing. And then you look more like in the funnel, which is where we play. And then even like post funnel with things like customer support, service, and ticket management. The bookends of the funnel, a lot of it honestly is it's headcount reduction replacement. Because you're getting to a point where you're saying, well, how do I just not have the SDR boiler room that every SaaS company built like over the last 25 years, but I have these agents that are sort of working when my humans aren't working, or they can do it to a better level of quality. The same thing happens like for us, and good plug here, like we use Fin from Intercom. It resolves like 95% of all of our tickets, no human ever goes through. I mean, it's a phenomenal service. And like for us, we're just not we don't need to grow that like that part of our world.
I asked that question because most of my conversation with founders is like, I need to have a full team of SDRs, BDR, and AEs, one-to-one. And then now it's more of like, how can I actually put my budget in the right perspective, given that we have this tech in place? Will this be replacing my plan of adding more resources? And does that mean it will affect my bottom line regardless?
Yep. So let's go back to those metrics. I'll use my Fin example there. Like by not needing to boot up a huge human-powered support, even an offshore one, what does that do?
Yeah.
Gross profit margin gets better. Hooray.
Yes,
My
sure.
ARR per FTE gets better. Hooray. Those are phenomenal things. Now, in the actual funnel where somebody is potentially buying something from you, right, you still need reps to carry quota capacity. You can't trust your AI to like give it their all every day and hopefully, book a $1.2 million quota. But what you can do is lift the wins of the people on the team. And that's one of the things that, when I talk about the bar being too low for sales leaders today around the lead scrubber dubber and the email filler outer, and it's like our clients will go and lift win rates by 30%. Now what's wild with that is, just follow this math here. That's 30% is in points, meaning if your win rate from first touch to close was 10%, this isn't going from 10 to 13. It's point lift going from 10 to 40. So what is crazy is by having reps have support in the moment that matters with those impatient buyers that can perform the best that they can, like that changes everything around your net magic number and your CAC and LTV, like all of that stuff. So then as a business, you're trying to figure out like, well, what's most important to us? And that's how you can figure out where you need to deploy AI.
Yeah, definitely. And the actual AE can focus on really relationship building with a heavy lift of the AI on the back end, making sure he's prepared, making sure all of these things are accounted for and all of that. So that's really amazing.
The freemium is the big thing that we're pushing on here as well. That's just really important for those smaller sized organizations to be able to like get in and experience it.
And definitely there's value there. And so this free trial, is this already available now, Matt? Like, are you rolling this out this year?
We're rolling out in Q1. So,
Awesome.
that's and we're on a similar schedule to Salesforce. So that starts in February here for us. So stay tuned for more there, and you'll be able to get immediate hands on this. We're also doing a second thing that I think it's a little bit of a surprise. I wasn't going to talk about it, but like, oh, you guys are teeing this up in a nice way. So the other thing about like SaaS versus AI being so different, I would encourage every founder to like stare at this and look at this is like how you show up in the world on the web. And where I'm going with this is the SaaS website had a really common pattern. You'd arrive, there's a hero section, there's your customer banner, there's calculate my ROI, and you maybe take a product tour, you watch a video, then you contact sales, or maybe even you can sign up for free. What's so different with AI, and going back to this, is most of these things, you've never even experienced it before. So it's hard to even know what you're looking for. So we're making that push here too, where we need people to understand, what does it feel like to sell with AI? Because I've never felt that before. And that needs to come first. And once that happens, then you earn the right to sign up for free. Then you earn the right to monetize. And I mean, that's a cool pattern that
I think
every founder
it's
should think.
changing what everybody is used to, right? And then once they get to understand that flow, then convert them to a freemium customer, then convert them to a paid one.
But there is that draw, and that leads into maybe one thing I'll mention there is there's also not a lot of discussion around the personality of AI either.
Ooh.
And that, like, imagine all three of us here had the same education, background, skill sets, knowledge, but only one of us could get the job. One of us will get the job, and that decision is going to be made based on company culture fit and personality. So what happened is all this AI is relatively nascent right now, where the big LLMs in the consumer side are starting to tune things toward this. But in the B2B world, like, again, people are starting to get there. But you can imagine if you have AI teammates that all have the same skill set and the capability, you will choose the one you want to work with on the same reason. Just like you want to stay at, the Ritz-Carlton versus the Four Seasons. They just feel different. And that's a big thing that I see unfolding in the next 12 to 18 months.
That's really a good point. You go with that person or that tech that you want to work with. There's always that preference for sure.
There's just certain people where like I know they see something ahead that like we have no idea is coming, and I feel like Matt, you're one of those people.
I appreciate that, and we're trying. I mean, it's just never been more fun to like be a builder in this time period. And the one that I'll throw out there too is I would say in 26, like sales teams for the first time will be in mass bringing their first virtual teammates into the deal fold, because right now everything has happened outside of the most critical moment, because it is the most critical moment.
I mean, I just want to know everything about AI in sales. I just feel like this is something everybody in the industry should know about. What is the best way that people can learn more? Where can people connect?
Simple thing is just you can connect with me personally online on LinkedIn, please do, and Vivun on LinkedIn. Just like you guys, we have a lot of like social channels that help people consume this, whether or not it's our YouTube channel or our podcast or the great guest episodes that we do. That's just a great way to consume this, that we're always dropping like content, research reports. And then the big thing is, on Vivun.com, obviously you can do the old school thing today, like come talk to us. But in our first quarter, the transformation is just going to be radical, which is why I would say like just follow, stay tuned, because you'll get to experience all of this without any barrier or bottleneck. And that's a big push that we've been making, because it's what the market needs to understand it too.
Definitely. And then Matt, we're also excited to see after this Q1, and hopefully you can get back and tell us like stories behind that and case studies and how, yeah, definitely. Let's do that. We can definitely talk about a lot of topics, as you said earlier. I do have rapid fire questions, Matt, if you're okay with that. That's a surprise I was talking about. These are questions that's like super easy. Yes or no or pass.
Sure.
All right, let's do it. AI replacing SDRs entirely.
No.
Ship faster or wait for perfection.
Faster. Perfection could come later.
Lead attribution over overall pipeline growth.
Ooh. I'm going to go pipeline growth.
Are sales teams overtooled today?
Totally, with all the wrong stuff.
Awesome. Does human
It's the
judgment
general.
still...
The general has given them all of the wrong tools for battle. Yes. Sorry. Go.
I agree with that. Does human judgment still matter more than automation in complex deals?
Totally.
Will AI teammates become mandatory in sales teams?
Yes.
Do most sales teams actually need more reps?
Oh boy. No. No.
All right.
Yeah. Average attainment
cool.
is what, like 50% if you from all, yeah, it's no. Everybody should be doing 110%. That's.
Is clarity the most underrated growth lever, or like focus?
Ooh.
Having a focus.
Off the cuff, I like that. Sure. Yeah. Yeah, that's important to have a clear vision. Sure, yeah.
Yeah. Are we still early in the AI-driven sales shift?
Yes, extremely.
Will sales roles look fundamentally different in 5 years?
Absolutely.
Awesome. I think that's it. Yeah, thanks again, Matt, for joining us. This has been really amazing and fun.
Angelique, thank you, and Tracy too. It was a blast.